Dividing integers using integer chips. This is a digital lesson, and students can move these yellow and red chips around their screen in order to solve the division problems. Now this lesson follows my other 3 lessons on integer chips with adding integers, subtracting integers, and multiplying with integer chips. So this lesson starts with an explanation or a review of what integers are. Whole numbers and their opposites, does not include fractions or decimals, and a review of the chips. So the red chips show negative numbers, yellow chips show positive numbers. And if students ask, where do we divide integers in real life? Well, one example is in the game of golf. So let's see how that works. So if students aren't familiar with the game of golf, it tells them that the better score is the lowest score. So professional golfers will often score in the negative numbers. And that means that they have to find an average of negative numbers in order to find their average score for a tournament. So it explains a little bit about par and how that works. And here explains that they have to take the average by adding all of their scores together, which include negative numbers, and then dividing by the number of days in the tournament. So we're going to show how this works. So here's an example. Tiger played in a golf tournament that lasted 3 days, and these were his 3 scores. So students are going to start by moving these chips into place to show his score on each day. So the yellow chips are positive, so the first day he got positive 3. So we're going to move those chips into place. They just click and hold on each chip and then they can move them. Second day, negative 5, so there are going to be 5 red chips. And then the third day was negative 4. That would be 4 red chips. And they'll have a few left over here. Now we want to add all 3 days together. So if we look at the chips, we see that there are 9 red and 3 yellow. We want to add them together. So on the next slide it shows how to do that. We've taken the 9 red chips and the 3 yellow chips and lined them up. So that way we can add them together and take out the 0 pairs. So here if we take out these 3 0 pairs, we're left with a total of negative 6. So students are going to type in negative 6. So they have a total of negative 6, but that's not the final score because we have to divide that number, negative 6, by the number of days in the tournament. So we're going to take that negative 6 and divide by 3. And we have 6 red chips here. We want to divide them equally into 3 groups. And if we do that, we get Tiger's final score of negative 2. So negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. So just to recap what they just did, Tiger's 3 scores were 3, negative 5, I'm just going to type these in, and negative 4. We added them together and we got a total of negative 6, divided by 3, and we got the final score of negative 2. Now we're going to go through one more example. This is a tournament and Michelle's playing in this tournament, and it's a 4-day tournament. So in order to find the average, we have to add the scores together and then divide by 4 because there were 4 days in the tournament, or 4 scores. So I've done part of this for them just to save time. So again, they're going to move the chips into place. Day 1 was a score of 4, day 2 a score of negative 7, negative 3, and negative 2. So students are going to have to line these up on the next slide. So here if we add all the red chips together, we get negative 12. So there's 12 red and 4 yellow. And here I've gone ahead and lined up the red chips just to save time. But students are going to line up all of these chips, the 12 red and the 4 yellow. Now if we take out the 0 pairs, we add them together, we're going to get a total score of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, negative 8. Now we've got a total of -8. Well, there were 4 days for the tournament, or 4 different scores, so we have to take this -8 and divide it into 4 equal groups. And you can see that Tiger and Michelle are going to end up with the same score, even though they had different scores on each day. The final score for Michelle will also be -2. So just to recap what we just did, Michelle was in a 4-day tournament. Let me back up here so I can remember what this was. She got a score of 4, a score of -7, a score of -3, and a score of -2. We added them all together, we got a total of -8. And then to find the average, we divide by the number of scores, which was 4, and we get a final score of -2. Now we're going to move on to some other examples of dividing integers. This is what we do when we divide a negative number by another negative number. So what this means, -8 divided by -4, is that we're taking -8, or 8 red chips, and we're dividing them into groups of -4. So if we divide them into groups of -4, we count the number of groups to get our answer. There were 2 groups. So -8 divided by -4 is +2. Now students are going to be doing this with the chips on the next few slides. Here we have -12 divided by -3. So we're taking these 12 chips and we're going to divide them into groups of -3. So just groups of 3. So just click and hold on each of these. We're going to make groups where each group has -3. And we're going to count the number of groups. So there are 4 groups. Our answer is +4. I'm going to type that in at the bottom. Next one, we've got -15 divided by -5. This time we're going to move all of these negative chips into groups of -5, and then we're going to count the groups. We'll do the same thing on the next slide. Now we're going to look at what happens when we divide a positive number by a negative number. So we look at 9 divided by -3, which is the opposite of 9 divided by 3. Sometimes we can say that this negative symbol also means the opposite of. So we can show 9 divided by 3 with these yellow chips. We have a total of 9, divide them into 3 equal groups. The opposite of 9 divided by 3 would be 9 divided by -3. So it's the same thing, except all of the chips are now red. They're the opposite color. So students are going to be doing this. First we have 8 divided by -4. So we're going to find 8 divided by 4 first. And if we take 8 and we divide it into groups, and these are going to be yellow, groups of 4. To equal groups of 4, there are going to be 2 groups. So we get an answer of 2. Now 8 divided by -4 would be the opposite of. So that negative symbol means opposite of, which means we're going to have the same thing except with the opposite color. -4 in each group. So the opposite would be -2. So 8 divided by 4 is +2. 8 divided by -4 would be -2. So then it has the students go back and look. So on slides 19 and 20, they're going to look and see what happens when they divided and what they, well, let's go back to 19. We divided here and the signs were different. One number was positive, one number was negative, and we got a negative answer. So we see that when the signs were different, our answer was negative. On slides 16, 17, and 18, the signs were the same. Here they were both negative. So when the signs were the same, our answer was positive. And that just leads them to the rules of dividing integers, which is exactly the same as the rules for multiplying integers. If the signs are different, their answer is negative. If the signs are the same, their answer is positive. So on the final slide, they're just going to use the rules, and they're going to divide each of these and then type in the answer. So that is the digital lesson, dividing integers with integer chips. It gives them a little bit of conceptual knowledge before they actually go into the rules. And it gives them a real-life example. So dividing integers with integer chips, digital lesson.